What's up in War Eagle War Report family? Your guy Ike Jones. We are here live from SEC Media Days, day one. What should we expect? Talk a little bit about it right here on the morning drop. Y'all know how we do War Report style. Just drop it on.
You are now listening to the War Report. Drop.
Morning drop. We're here this morning. You got Ike Jones in here with my man Mike G. What's up, baby?
Yeah, we are live from Nashville. SEC Media Days kicks off today around noon. The first coach will go up. Ike, I'm super excited to hear from the coaches this week and learn a little bit more about the direction of every program in the SEC West and on the other side of the conference.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting this week, man. We experienced SEC Media Days last year. It was in Atlanta, different venue this time, here in Nashville this time. Look, a lot less walking for us this time around, right? We're not going to have to go to different buildings. You guys don't know what you think about how the walk. Just trust me, there was a lot of walking last year, not as much of that this year. But Commissioner Greg Sankey set to address everybody around 11:30 Central Time today. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say. We've got conference expansion stuff. We've got the new scheduling stuff that's come out. This is going to be the first time he's had a major media address surrounding that sort of thing. So I wonder if there are going to be questions about this final year of a lot of these traditional rivalries potentially. Have they made any plans moving forward? Because, they said that this first season was just kind of a stopgap. Have they gone ahead and made any additional plans? A lot of stuff to talk about this week with Commissioner Sankey for sure.
Yeah, listen, the last year of the SEC as we know it. So they're going to start with the expansion, and there's going to be I expect there to be a lot of questions for Mr. Sankey about, what's going on, like how is this going to look? What are the goals? How are Oklahoma and Texas getting adjusted and acclimated to the idea of being an expanded SEC? So I expect a lot of questions about that. I'm sure there are going to be some questions about rule changes and all kinds of stuff going on this week. So we sat down with Greg Sankey last year, Ike. And I expect we'll sit down with him again this year and, pass us your questions. Tweet at us. Yeah. What questions do you have for Greg Sankey? We're going to sit down with him and talk about it.
Yeah, in addition to Greg Sankey, we've got Brian Kelly, LSU head coach, Elijah Drinkwitz, the Missouri head coach, and everybody's War Report favorite, Timothy T. Fisher, will be getting up and addressing people for Texas A&M. So if you guys have any things that you would like for us to listen, we're going to be in the rooms asking questions to all of these coaches. So if there's anything that you guys want to hear about some of them, let us know as well, because we're not just here to cover Auburn. We're here to cover the SEC today, this week. So make sure that you guys get those into us at the War Report on Twitter so that we can get those questions in.
Yeah, Brian Kelly goes first. And so Captain Practice will goes first for the LSU Tigers. The Tigers won the West last year, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to repeat that feat this year. I think Jaden Daniels returns, does he not? Jaden Daniels returns, and so having an incumbent quarterback, which there are not a ton. Remind me if I'm wrong. There are not a ton of incumbent quarterbacks this year. I think a lot of teams are going to be starting brand new starters this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Jaden Daniels comes to mind. Spencer Rattler comes to mind. But gosh, man, outside of that, like who's returning? Kentucky doesn't have a returning starter. Vandy doesn't have a returning starter. Georgia doesn't. Bama doesn't. We don't. Florida doesn't. So Mississippi State will have an incumbent quarterback there at the helm there. Presumably, Ole Miss is going to have another guy in there that's going to be a returning starter. Texas A&M, Connor Wickman didn't start the season, but it looks like he'll be returning as a starter over there. So, yeah, not a lot of guys that are going to be coming into year two here in the SEC or year two and even in their program. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jaden Daniels in year two matures in that offense. Last year, it really was a kind of virtue of his legs that what made him so successful. It wasn't so much his arm. So we'll see if he develops a little bit more in his ability to pass within that offense. So I think there's some questions about LSU and how they're going to duplicate really what was some unexpected or unprecedented early success under Brian Kelly in year one. So I'm looking forward to hearing how he addresses the media in terms of that.
Yeah, listen, LSU has a task. They have a task this year, and it's going to be difficult I think, to repeat that feat. Alabama has some questions at quarterback. If there were any year they were going to do it, and this would kind of be the year for Brian Kelly. So I expect there to be questions about NIL, how programs are progressing, with their collectives, operating within the rules of NIL. There's going to be a lot of questions this week. But for Brian Kelly in particular, recruiting and maintaining the standard. This is the last year that Auburn, well, not the last, I should say the last year, but the regular rivalry between Auburn and LSU goes away this year. We're here. So, I wonder if Brian Kelly knows the significance, Ike, of this rivalry that has been played every year for as long as we can remember. Not happening after this year. So it's down in Baton Rouge this year. I'll be interested to see what he has to say about that. We're dropping an interview with our guy you guys have seen, the preview, Coy Moore. During our fireside chat with him, he talks a little bit about the significance of playing LSU in Baton Rouge. This is his last chance to do it. And it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how the Tigers match up. LSU has an opportunity here to kind of, I don't want to say pull even with Alabama, but there's a chance. There's a lot of people who feel like a changing of the guard is at hand. And Saban is near the end of his career. And if Alabama were ever gettable, now is the time for Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers to take advantage of that. So we're going to have some questions for him in that regard today.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? You talk about the changing of the guard. And it's so difficult. Like, we're not normally, like, I'm trying to, like, not turn and talk to you. You're sitting right here next to me. So, and pretend, but I want to talk to you guys out here in the audience as well. But, yeah, so I think it is interesting to hear about, do people feel as if the SEC is gettable right now? Because for so many years, it just seemed as if the power dynamic was what it was. I'm actually interested to hear Nick Saban's thoughts on this when he gets a chance to come up to the podium. Does he feel as if now, because remember last year, notably when you heard Kirby Smart come out here and said he's not going to be hunted, right? I wonder if Brian Kelly's going to have that thought process of like, hey, we made it close to the top, but we don't feel we're still hungry for more, and we're not going to be the hunted now that we're not going to be functioning with this target on our back. But similarly, I wonder how Nick Saban feels, right, in an era where he isn't the apex predator that people fear anymore right now. Does that fuel him in a certain way? Does he care? Like, of course he's going to probably like, I don't care what anybody thinks. We're just going to do it. We got to do it in our program. Like, I understand the Nick Saban thought process around that sort of thing, but I do think it's interesting, or it's going to be interesting for me to hear some of these coaches address kind of where they sit along the hierarchy of how people predicted them to be and how that weighs on their locker rooms and the way that they approach their seasons.
Yeah. Going second today is Jimbo Fisher. Now, there should be a ton of questions for this guy. If there is any coach in the SEC West that's on the hot seat, it's Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher is flush on the hot seat. They paid him a boatload of money. They backed up the Brinks truck to his front yard. They dropped a boatload of cash on him. And the results have not been what I think fans would expect for a guy who
not for that price check. No, not for that price tag. You expect a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, I would say in the SEC for any price tag at all, it's difficult. I mean, Hugh Freeze is making just over $6 million a year, and the expectation is bowl game. Jimbo Fisher didn't even make a bowl game last year. Right. I mean, good God, you had what was widely believed to be the best recruiting class in the history of college football, and you didn't make a bowl game, right? You struggled at quarterback, and as an offensive head coach, you were piss poor offensively. Right. I hope that the media holds his feet to the fire this week about the product that they put on the field offensively, and just reach for Bobby Petrino for Evel Knievel to come in and try to fix the program. Listen, Bobby Petrino is a good coach, but this is a desperation move.
Yeah.
This is a desperation move because he's got to fix this immediately. Last year offensively was an absolute disaster. I hope there are 15 straight questions about that mess of an offense that we saw from Texas A&M last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to hear what his thoughts are coming out of the spring, how the experiment's going thus far with the evolution of that offense, and how much of this is going to be hands off, Bobby Petrino, you have the show, and how much of this is going to be. He's got the show. Because remember, we talked to Hugh Freeze about this when he initially had the questions. You asked him the question in his introductory press conference, what was the offense going to be like? And he's like, I'm considering not calling plays this year. But then you fast forward a little bit more, and he backed off of that a little bit. And he's like, well, I'm going to reserve the right to jump in there. If I got something on, I see something, I'm going to jump in. Like, I wonder if that evolution starts to happen in Texas A&M, where it's like, it's him. But, if I feel like, I need to then I'm going, so I think it's going to be interesting to see, because when you're a coach that's used to calling plays, which Jimbo Fisher is, it's hard. We saw that with Gus Malzahn. I think we're going to see elements of that this year with Coach Hugh Freeze, and you're going to see it, in my opinion, with Jimbo Fisher. When you're used to calling plays, you are reluctant to release all of that responsibility to someone else, regardless of how competent that person is. So it's going to be interesting to see what the power dynamic is around play calling and decision making for that football team.
Yeah, we've seen enough of Jimbo Fisher to know this play calling experiment should be over. This should be over. Now it's time for you to find a competent play caller to come in and figure this out. Auburn fans are not hoping for him to figure it out. I hope they, they
at least figure it out later in the season. Week 7, 8. Yeah, if you get it figured out, maybe we go to College Station and beat them, and that prompts them to figure it out a little bit better. That's kind of listen. I don't care if you have success outside of our week. Just don't have success the week we play.
So it's going to be interesting to see what Jimbo Fisher's answers are to all these questions. He's got a lot to fix, and he's got to fix it quickly. He's going into like his 4th or 5th year now at Texas A&M. Is this year 4? I think this is year 4. It came in 2019.
It might be year 5.
4 or 5 years. I mean, either way, he's deep into this tenure, and he's got to figure it out. So he goes second today. Right. Lastly, Eli Drinkowitz, the Missouri Tigers. So we get two sets of Tigers.
B. Will says it's his 6th year coming up, and he is definitely the Jimothy expert on the panel. So he knows exactly
6 years, man. And this is where you're at. I mean, arguably you had one good season, which was 2020, the COVID shortened season,
right?
Where they had one loss. It was to Alabama. He got Kellen Mond into the draft. At the time, I was giving him credit for that, but ultimately B. Will proved to be right, and look how it's turned out for him. So Missouri goes last today. Now, I'm not sure there are a ton of expectations on Missouri. That defense, they return a really good defense this year. But there are going to be questions about them offensively as well, too. So we'll sit in on Eli's session and see what he has to say to the masses about what's going on, at Missouri. They're kind of an overlooked program.
I mean, for reasons. I mean, who nobody sees Missouri on their schedule. Listen, I ain't gonna lie, I saw Missouri on our schedule last year, and I wasn't super excited about that. It turned out to be a way too exciting game last year for that. But I am interested to kind of see what it feels like. I'm not so much interested in what Coach Drinkwitz has to say. I'd love to talk to Missouri fans and feel like what the temperament is on the fan base around their program. And because it seems as if they're hovering in mediocrity since coming into the conference first 2 years, winning the SEC East. Missouri just hasn't. There's been no shine on that program since then, and I find it interesting, kind of the dynamic of what happens with programs that hover in that space of just you're in purgatory essentially. Like, it doesn't feel like you're making any progress. You're not really getting worse. You're just kind of where you are. And I don't know. So I wonder what Coach Drinkwitz feels like. I'm sure he goes into every season feeling like, okay, we're going to make some strides, but it just never comes together. So it's just a really awkward place to be in if you're a Missouri Tiger.
You know what's wild about this is that Missouri has made an SEC championship game since coming to the SEC. Texas A&M has not. They have not been to an SEC championship game in over 10 years of being in the conference. Missouri has done it. So it's going to twice, right? Yeah. So there should maybe be less heat. I don't think Eli Drinkwitz's seat is hot.
Nah.
But certainly, fans, after a while, sustained mediocrity gets hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So, offensively, they can figure some things out. They played Georgia to 16-12 last year.
Right.
That's how good that defense was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
so
definitely have some things to build upon. They have to figure that offense out as well. So speaking of incumbent starters, Brady Cook is going to be an incumbent starter from Missouri. So it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like coming up into another year in that program. But yeah, I don't know that anybody's clamoring, making hot seat talks about Eli Drinkwitz. But, if his seat is hot and he was in the Auburn area, he would need to hit up Harmon Mechanical. So if you are in the Auburn area right now, Harmon Mechanical is the place that you need to go. Harmon Mechanical is there when you need air. Make sure you hit them up at harmonmechanical.com. You can give them a call at 334-219-0717 for an initial consultation. They'll come out there and make sure that your HVAC system is where it needs to be. Also want to thank show sponsor Rogue Shop. Make sure you guys head over to rogueshop.com and use code RAPPORT. They are the sponsor of today's morning drop. We're going to drop into the comment section and hear what you all have to say. We will get things started this morning with Daniel Moultrie, who comes in and says, Ike and Mike G ask Jimbo if he or Petrino will be calling plays. We've already addressed that we intend to ask them. And if Petrino will be coming to work every morning on a Harley. I don't think that's going to be a thing. But,
that Harley question is going to be bold. That's a bold question. It's a bold move there, Daniel. I'm not sure I'll be the one to ask it.
Yeah, that is a good way to make sure you don't get your name called for the rest of the week right there. Miller House jumps in and says, no grace for Jimbo. And this is in response to P-Pass saying, give Jimothy grace. Miller House says no immediately. There will be no grace to him. I don't know why P-Pass is advocating for grace. Grace in what regard? Like, what does he need grace for? He's a head coach. He should answer questions about his program and the direction of that program. So, no, there will be no grace issued. We give no quarter. P-Pass, no quarter.
Agree.
Chris S. jumps in and says, ask Kelly if he's been working on his Cajun accent. You guys are in a petty mood today. You want us to ask about Cajun accents and Harleys. Yeah, I think he's abandoned the Cajun accent. But it's one of those things. I'm guilty of this. When you're around a certain group of people for a long enough time, you start to, like, there's a tonal thing that happens where you start to mimic what they've got going on vocally. So maybe it'll happen for him after a period of time. He'll start to just naturally assimilate that accent into his. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, he's trying hard to recruit down there in Baton Rouge. So what they're doing down there, he's got to figure out a way to keep that momentum going. The SEC West is fickle, and it's really difficult to maintain momentum once you think you found it. So the talent is there. I'm sure he'll be dancing and cooking his way into another good recruiting class.
That's again why it's so impressive what Coach Saban has done, right? Because it's getting to the top. Most people will tell you the climb to the top feels hard, but they realize it is drastically different to maintain a space at the top. So it's
right.
What Coach Saban has done has been immaculate at Alabama. Props to him and the machine that is continually cranking out championship level football over there. But hopefully that machine is getting a little rusty. We'll see. Derek McClellan comes in and says, in the lobby, repping my War Report t-shirt I won. Hey, that's what's up. Come down there and say what's up to you at some point in time.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to come down and say hi, Derek.
Yeah. Anthony Grant jumps in and says, besides LSU, who are the other schools scheduled for today? We already talked about that. So we got LSU, Texas A&M, and Missouri today, as well as an address from the commissioner. So we will have some sort of recap for that information for you all at some point in time. If you are a member, stay tuned. I don't know. I think we'll kind of figure out what the schedule is going to be like for this week. This may be the only actual live morning drop that we do this week, just because we're going to have interviews popping off during this time, or we're going to have to bump up the morning drop. We'll figure that out as we get into the week and see what the schedule is looking like. But we will definitely get you guys a recap of what happened today from the Dana Jones jumps in and says, ask Sankey if there's going to be any more tweaks to recruiting, the portal, and NIL rules. So I'll let you address this first. I'll say this from a recruiting standpoint. I'm sure they're still tinkering with that. The portal is not really the only thing I could see is whether or not they're going to get rid of the interconference transfer portal rule that they've had, because we're the only conference I think that still has that limitation on whether or not you can transfer within the conference and not have to sit out after a certain time. I don't think any of the other Power 5 conferences have that rule. So maybe there's going to have an adjustment for that, and that's something I could see us getting into with him. But as far as NIL, there's not much the SEC can do around NIL because those are being handled at a state level. So, I mean, he can address it, but I don't know if there's much tweaks that the SEC can make when there's legislation that they have to get passed at the state level. What's your thoughts on these, Mike?
Yeah, the SEC, they lobby state representatives and their political contacts to try to unify the rules around NIL in every state. It's different, man. Politicians have dug their hands into this. It's made it muddy. Some of them are doing great work for their state. Others are not. And it makes it difficult when the rules are not the same, when they're not even for everybody to get NIL straight. So we'll have some questions for him around that. Certainly, we'll see how the day goes. But when he comes to sit down with us, this may be something that we talk about with him directly.
Yeah. Ant Robinson jumps in and says, ask Commissioner Sankey, what did they think about what do they think about the scheduling in the near future? I think this is going to be a hot button topic. I think a lot of people will be poised to have scheduling questions going beyond the year 2024.
Yeah, scheduling is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because Florida got the hardest schedule I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like 11 P5 schools, 11 on a schedule.
We're going to have to ask Napier about this, right? Like when he gets in here, we need to figure out, is he mad at somebody for trying to like kill him? Like what, why are y'all doing this to this man? It's not fair. They have the most unreal schedule ever coming down the pipeline for 2024. And I've got to ask Napier who he pissed off.
Yeah, look, their out of conference is to some extent is their responsibility, is their fault, right? Florida State, obviously, that's their in-state out of conference rival,
right?
But they play UCF, and I think it's Clemson that they have on the schedule as well too. Like, good God, man! Like, talk about an unlucky draw for them. The only cupcake that they truly have on the schedule is Samford,
right?
And so scheduling definitely will be. I think Oklahoma has a pretty tough first-year slate in the SEC as well too.
Yeah.
So I felt like RIP Oklahoma when I saw that. So we'll see. But yes, we will definitely ask Napier about his schedule 2024.
I'm interested. Next year's SEC Media Days is going to be so interesting now that we have the new folks coming into the conference. So going to be interested to see what that looks like. And then like right now, with more teams further west, are they considering moving more of the events a little bit further west? Because we've been in the heart of Nashville, Atlanta. I mean, they went all the way to Tampa for the basketball tournament last year, which was ridiculous. But like, I'm wondering if they're going to try to find a city that's a little more centralized to this new landscape of the SEC to start having this stuff. I think they're under contract here with Nashville for a couple of years, but that might be an interesting question to ask Commissioner Sankey. Is there a consideration to moving the base of operations for what they do for something more centralized to the new footprint that the SEC currently has?
Agreed.
P-Pass says, grace to butter him up for week 4 grilling on the sponsor grill. So getting a little Golden's cast iron shout out.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, listen, I listen, he can be dead meat by the time we hit week 4. I don't care. I give no quarter, no reverse psychology happening for me with Jimbo Fisher. If I got a question, I'm gonna ask him. But we definitely want to fill out that whole situation. The Walker Show jumps in and says, what day does Auburn open for questions? That is tomorrow. Tomorrow, Auburn will be on the docket. So we'll have Coach Hugh Freeze and the 3 representatives from the team, Luke Deal, Cam Stutz, and Elijah McAllister will all be here tomorrow representing Auburn University. Last one we have here, we'll get it wrapped up. Anthony Grant, I just wanted to end it on a happy note. He says, proud of you guys, man. We've seen the hard work from the beginnings. Blessings for show. Props to you. Thank you, Anthony. You have been
here.
One of the day ones. We appreciate you very much, my guy. And we appreciate all of you guys for continuing to support what we got going on. Any final thoughts before we get out of here this morning, Mike?
No, listen, man, it's going to be a great week. I saw there were some questions about when Hugh Freeze goes. He goes on Tuesday. Which is tomorrow. So Tuesday will be, follow us on Tuesday. We're going to have a ton of content dropping this week, but Tuesday is Auburn's day. So we're going to be following Hugh Freeze and the player representatives that they've chosen. Cam Stutz, Elijah McAllister, and Luke Deal are coming this week. So we'll be with those guys all day tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. As always, we want to make sure that you guys hit up the sponsor of the War Report. That is ropeshop.com. Use code REPORT when you head over there for a little something off your purchase. That lets them know the guys at the War Report sent you. We will be back at you all later on with more information today at some point in time. Look out for the fireside chat. Make sure you're sharing this video, like and subscribe to the channel. You know where we are on all the social media and all of those things. But we'll be back at you guys later. Until the next time, and it's all War Eagle. Peace.
Peace.